The Detroit River looks calm if you don't know its story. On the surface, it's just a strip of water marking the line between Ontario and the United States, one of the busiest waterways on Earth. Freighters grind past each other carrying iron ore from Michigan's Upper Peninsula to feed Detroit's roaring auto plants. Timber barges slide through the narrow gap between Windsor and Detroit on their way to Lake Erie and the East Coast. On weekends, it's all pleasure boats and fishermen, people chasing sunlight and a quiet bite. But winter tells a different story. When the cold hits hard, the river tightens and freezes. Traffic stops, steel hulls vanish. And in the 1920s, that ice turned into something else entirely, a silent highway for crime. During Prohibition, the frozen Detroit River wasn't an obstacle, it was an invitation. Bootleggers used it like a bridge, dragging booze from Canada straight into Detroit. From there, liquor spilled outward, south to St. Louis, west across the Midwest, and especially to Chicago, where it ended up in speakeasies under Al Capone's log cabin label. But crossing that ice wasn't a casual trip. Anyone moving a load had better be armed and ready, because Detroit didn't belong to the law back then. It belonged to the Purple Gang. Like every booming city at the turn of the century, Detroit had a shadow. Its streets were hard, its neighborhoods crowded and desperate, and trouble didn't just show up. It grew there naturally. The Purple Gang came out of that environment. Their rise followed a familiar pattern seen in other cities. Brooklyn's 5 Points Gang, Chicago's North Side Crew, Philadelphia's Boiler Gang, same ingredients, same pressure cooker. But their name, that part was pure Detroit. The story traces back to Hastings Street, where two shopkeepers were constantly dealing with the same group of young thieves, shoplifting, smashing displays, tearing places apart. One day, fed up and staring at the damage, one shop owner muttered that these boys weren't like normal kids. They were spoiled, twisted, off color. The other shopkeeper looked around and nailed it, rotten, purple, like bad meat. From that moment on, the name stuck. Early on, there was nothing glamorous about them. They were kids, sons of Russian Jewish immigrants who arrived between 1881 and 1914, chasing the promise of America. Their families settled in Little Jerusalem, also known as Hastings Street or Paradise Valley. The dream was real, but so was the poverty. The streets didn't welcome them. They hardened them. School didn't help. At Bishop School, teachers labeled them troublemakers and shoved them into special classes meant for problem kids. That's where the core group came together. The Keywell brothers, the Fleischer brothers, Irving Milberg, Irving Shapiro. At the time, they were just angry boys. In hindsight, they were future predators. Their crime started small, shoplifting, rolling drunks near Eastern Market. Then came shaking down local merchants, often the same Jewish shopkeepers their own parents worked beside. Survival turned into habit, habit turned into power. They grew up dirt poor, and they preyed on what they knew. Streetcars were easy targets, candy, fruit, gum, anything they could snatch. But they weren't just thieves, they were bullies. They jumped kids their own age, then moved on to intimidating adults. Violence came naturally. At the center were the Bernstein brothers, Abe, Joe, Raymond, and Izzy. Under their leadership, the group shifted from nuisance kids to organized criminals, jewelry theft, shakedowns, and then everything changed. Prohibition hit, and Detroit's geography did the rest. Overnight, those street punks found themselves standing at the gateway to the biggest black market opportunity in America. They leveled up fast. Armed robberies, hijackings, extortion, enforcement work so brutal it left messages behind. They didn't ease into the underworld. They kicked the door down and took control. By the early 1920s, the Purple Gang had a reputation that made grown criminals nervous. They weren't classic bootleggers, they were hijackers. Why smuggle booze when you could just steal it? According to historian Paul Kavieff, they preferred ambushes. Anyone unloading liquor along the Detroit waterfront had to be ready to fight for their life. The Purples didn't just steal shipments, they wiped out the guards too. At first, they targeted other criminals. That wasn't mercy, it was strategy. Crooks don't call the police, and the Purples knew it. Their savagery caught the attention of the old-school mob bosses. Charlie Leiter and Henry Shore, traditional Italian operators running the Oakland Sugar House, saw potential. They brought the Purples in as muscle. The Bernsteins and their hitters became the enforcers, shaking down businesses and keeping back alley brewers in line. By the late 1920s, Police Inspector Henry J. Garvin summed it up simply: the Purple Gang ruled Detroit through fear. But the group terrorizing the city in 1928 wasn't the same street crew people remembered from a decade earlier. The leadership was the same, but the soldiers weren't. New blood poured in from New York, Chicago, and St. Louis. Garvin believed the gang officially organized in 1926, mainly to defend their turf from the invading St. Louis gang. That same year, things escalated fast. In March, gambler Meyer Fish Bloomfield was kidnapped. His boss paid $50,000 to get him back, and that ransom cracked the door open. Kidnappings exploded. Gambling houses became targets. The real warning shot came that same month at the Miraflores apartments. 3 men were cut down in a machine gun ambush. The hit happened inside an apartment tied to Purple associates, but the gang didn't pull the trigger themselves. They outsourced it to a rising killer named Fred Burke. The bloodshed traced back to Christmas night, 1926. While the city celebrated, saloon keeper Johnny Reed was murdered behind his building. Reed was a liquor agent for the Purples and an ex-member of the St. Louis Rats. Earlier that year, Reed's crew had gone to war with Sicilian gangster Mike DePisa and won, but winning came with a price. DePisa's revenge was slow and final. Suspicion fell on Frank Wright, a Chicago jewel thief who moved into Detroit with 2 partners and started kidnapping gamblers for ransom. They made the mistake of targeting Purple-connected men. Then they crossed the final line, killing Jake Weinberg, a Purple associate. That sealed their fate. The Bernsteins hired Fred Burke and Gus Winkler. They used Bloomfield as bait. A call went out, a deal was offered. Apartment 308 at the Miraflores, early morning, quick exchange. At 4:30 a.m., Wright, Bloom, and Cohen walked into a hallway thinking they were collecting. A fire door burst open. Gunmen stepped out. Pistols and Thompson submachine guns tore the space apart. The 3 men dropped where they stood. The shooters vanished into the dark. Bloom and Cohen died instantly. Wright survived briefly, 14 bullet wounds holding him between life and death. When police asked what happened, he could barely whisper that the machine gun worked. He died hours later. The city erupted. Police grabbed suspects, including Fred Burke. No charges stuck, no one ever paid, but Detroit had crossed the line. The Purple Gang had unleashed machine guns into the streets. Investigators counted over 100 bullet holes in the walls. The message was clear: Detroit belonged to the Purples now. As the gang's numbers grew and their names started ringing bells all over Detroit, the Purple Gang leveled up. They weren't just corner toughs anymore. They became hired muscle, high-end mercenaries for anyone with money and a problem. When the Cleaners and Dyers War broke out, the Purples dropped right into the middle of it, enforcing union rules with fear and violence, making sure independent shop owners either fell in line or paid the price. Their methods were simple and ruthless: theft, beatings, bombings, murder, whatever it took to send a message. And they didn't do any of it for free. They got paid heavy for every job. So much so that Detroit police eventually reached a point where almost every bombing tied to the war landed back at the Purple Gang's doorstep. Things came to a head in 1928. That's when Charles C. Jacoby, vice president of Jacoby's French Cleaners and Dyers, ended up in handcuffs alongside 9 men tied directly to the Purples. Prosecutors said it was a massive extortion scheme aimed at wholesale cleaners across the city. The names alone told the story. Abe and Raymond Bernstein, Irving Milberg, Eddie Fletcher, Joe Miller, Irving Shapiro, Abe Kamensti, Abe and Simon Axler. It read like Detroit's underworld all showed up on one charge sheet. As police pressure increased, the gang's usual money stream started drying up, and when the money slowed, panic set in. The Purples needed cash fast. That's when they linked up with the Oakland Sugar House gang, already infamous for blood-soaked battles over bootlegging kickbacks. The plan was simple: raise a defense fund any way necessary. They slapped a 55-cent tax on every 100 pounds of sugar sold to distillers. When that didn't bring in enough, they switched tactics and started terrorizing local merchants to close the gap. The heat finally boiled over when police raided the Sugar House gang and arrested Joseph Bernstein, the brother of Purple Gang boss Abe Bernstein. People wondered why law enforcement couldn't just shut the whole thing down. The answer was fear. A man named Garvin explained it best. The Purples mostly preyed on other criminals. They had the underworld so locked down that no one dared file a complaint. Without witnesses willing to talk, police could only watch from the sidelines. On June 4th, 1928, the extortion trial tied to the Cleaner and Dyer wars finally began under Judge Charles Bowles. The prosecution came loaded, calling 42 witnesses. Then everything fell apart. Judge Bowles got sick, forcing a month-long delay. By the time court resumed in September, the momentum was gone. Jacoby walked, the gangsters walked. Even Frank X. Martell, head of the Detroit Federation of Labor, beat his own extortion charges. The real reason came out later. Right before trial, someone broke into the Cleaners and Dyer's union offices and stole the exact documents needed to prove the case. No arrests were ever made. No paperwork meant no conviction, but acquittal didn't mean innocence. A 1929 Detroit News article tied the same crew to cold-blooded murders. Sam Sigmund from Perfect Cleaners and Dyers killed years earlier. Sam Polikoff from Union Cleaners and Dyers found riddled with bullets at Dexter and Grand. In 1920s Detroit, if the courts didn't get you, the streets usually did. Police also pinned the murder of Officer Vivian Welsh on the Purple Gang. Welsh had been shaking down speakeasies, not realizing he was stepping on Purple territory. Headlines said he was taken for a ride, a phrase that never ended well. In Detroit, you didn't tax the Purple Gang and live to tell about it. By the late 20s, the Purples ruled the city. Gambling, booze, drugs, vice. If it made money and broke the law, they touched it. They even seized control of the city's wire service, giving them a monopoly on horse racing information. Every betting parlor answered to them. Their reach stretched far beyond Michigan. Abe Bernstein rubbed shoulders with the biggest names in organized crime, partnering with major figures to run upscale gambling houses in Miami. His influence was so strong, he even did favors for Al Capone himself. Then came February 13th, 1929. Bernstein called Bugs Moran with a tempting offer. A hijacked booze shipment headed to Chicago. Risky, considering Bernstein had once supplied Capone, but Moran bit. He told Bernstein to deliver it to a garage at 2122 North Clark Street the next morning. Later, historians poked holes in the story. Almost everyone waiting in that garage was part of Moran's inner circle, dressed sharp, not like men ready to unload crates. Others said there was no shipment at all. The crew was there to meet Moran, who'd recently been shot, to talk survival as Capone closed in. On Valentine's Day morning, 7 men waited inside the garage. Moran and 2 others were running late. That delay saved their lives. A black Cadillac pulled up around 10:30. 2 men stepped out in police uniforms, 3 in plain clothes. Moran drove by, saw what looked like a raid, and turned away. Inside, the fake cops lined the men against the wall and opened fire with Thompson submachine guns. 3 clean sweeps, head, chest, stomach, 70 rounds. A shotgun finished the job. A dog named Highball wouldn't stop barking. That's how neighbors knew something was wrong. Police found 6 men dead. One, Frank Gusenberg, was still alive. Shot again and again, he crawled 20 feet before collapsing. At the hospital, officers begged him to talk. He didn't. He said no one shot him and died keeping the code. And if you're tracing where the Purple Gang's world really starts to crack, this is the moment. See, Detroit wasn't just minding his business. The city was getting ready for a massive American Legion convention. That meant thousands of veterans rolling in, and you already know how that plays out. Hotel rooms packed, bars overflowing, and a whole lot of thirsty folks looking to celebrate. For bootleggers, this is payday season. Everybody's scrambling, trying to stack as much liquor as they can before the crowds hit. But with that kind of pressure, things don't stay smooth for long. Shipments are getting hijacked left and right, then re-hijacked. Crews stealing from crews, friends turning on friends. The tension is thick. On top of that, there's a bookmaking operation that's drowning in debt. Federal agents circling like vultures, and an old beef that's been simmering way too long. The Purples are clashing with some young out-of-town players who don't believe in taking orders. And when you mix ego, money, and desperation in Detroit's underworld, somebody's bound to bleed. The hit that followed didn't just shake the streets, it owned the headlines. All 3 Detroit papers ran with it for weeks. In one ruthless move, some of the harder line Purple members settled an old score, but they also walked straight into a disaster. That decision lit the fuse on their downfall. From that moment on, their grip on Detroit started slipping. Now enter the young guns, Jaime Paul, Joe Lebowitz, and Joe Sutker, late 20s, early 30s, hungry and reckless. They originally came to Detroit under the umbrella of the Oakland Sugar House Gang. Their job was simple: rod men, muscle, protect the booze, keep the peace with a gun if needed. But these 3 weren't built to stay in the background. They didn't want to be loyal soldiers forever. Before long, they broke away and started carving out their own lane. They jumped into the racetrack handbook racket and the wholesale liquor business, moving under fake names and fake smiles. And truth be told, they were good at it. They linked up with the crew known as the 3rd Avenue Navy, named for the way they unloaded Canadian whiskey right into the railroad yards between 3rd and 4th. They were moving product, making noise, building a name. Problem was, they didn't respect the code. They hijacked shipments from anybody. Friends, enemies, didn't matter. They double-crossed partners. They stepped on toes like it was a sport. In Detroit's underworld, there are rules, even among criminals. These 3 treated those rules like suggestions. Police Inspector Frank Fraley knew them well. He called them the terrors of the 3rd Street District. Complaints kept pouring in that they were running operations out of the Orlando Hotel. Fraley finally had enough. He personally booted them out and made it clear they weren't welcome in his precinct. But getting kicked out of a hotel, that was nothing compared to what was coming. By spring 1931, the trio had gone full-time into bookmaking. They brought in Solomon Solly Levine, a local hood with the right connections. For a minute, it looked like things might actually stabilize. Then reality hit hard. The East Side Mafia had been placing serious bets with them, big money. And then one day, the Mafia hit a monster parlay, a couple of $100 grand. In 1931, that kind of loss could bury a man for good. They were broke in a way that couldn't be hidden. Sutker had already been evicted. His wife and little daughter put out on the street. Their flashy cars got repossessed. The image was cracking. The money wasn't there. And when you owe the Mafia money you don't have, that clock starts ticking. So they got creative, desperate creative. They bought liquor from the Purple Gang on credit, watered it down, and flipped it fast to make quick cash. It was grimy, but it worked, at least at first. Then it got worse. The East Side crew came back with what they called a boat race, a fixed horse race, another setup, another loss. The trio got cleaned out again, and once again, they ran back to the Purples, grabbed more liquor on credit, diluted it, and undercut the market. Now they were playing both sides. owing the mafia a fortune and scamming the Purple Gang at the same time. That's not hustle. That's suicide. By this point, it wasn't about if they were going to die. It was about who would get to them first. Then autumn rolls around. The American Legion convention finally hits Detroit. For bootleggers, it's the Super Bowl. Every blind pig, every cabaret, every speakeasy is stacking orders. The city is about to drink like there's no tomorrow. The trio sees opportunity. They're deep in debt, but they believe this convention is their reset button. One big rush of cash and they're back on top. Only problem? They owe Ray Bernstein a heavy tab for whiskey. Through Solly Levine, they try to buy time. The pitch is simple. Let the convention money come in, then everybody gets paid. Levine is the perfect middleman. He grew up around the Bernstein brothers and still had ties to the Purple Gang. Both sides trusted him enough to talk. Bernstein listened. Slim, cold-eyed, always wearing that scowl. But he kept his tone calm. Said they straighten it out. Said once the bill was handled, the boys could run bets and liquor again. But in Detroit's underworld, peace talks usually come with hidden terms. A meeting was set, a so-called conference, and the three partners took it as a sign that they were back in the game. That night, they celebrated. Sutka felt so comfortable, laughing like tomorrow was guaranteed. Jaime Paul kept it low-key, turned in early, figured the meeting would smooth everything out. Leibowitz went the other direction. He tore through the town drinking heavy, waking up the next morning with a hangover so brutal he didn't even bother shaving. They moved like men who thought the storm had passed. But in that world, the moment a crew starts feeling untouchable, that's usually when the ground gives way. September 16th came in quiet, but it wasn't leaving that way. That afternoon, Solly Levine was at the bookie joint holding things down when the phone rang. On the other end were the Purples. They gave him an address, 1740 Collingwood, apartment 211, 3 o'clock sharp, a sit down. Levine grabbed a pink betting slip and scribbled it down. Just like that, the clock started ticking. Around 2:45 p.m., the four men headed out. And here's the wild part. They went unarmed. In their minds, you don't walk into a peace meeting strapped if you're serious about making a deal. Showing up clean was supposed to signal trust. The Collingwood spot was low-key, quiet west side apartment building, regular folks, laundry hanging, kids probably playing somewhere nearby. Nobody would have guessed it was about to turn into a slaughterhouse. Ray Bernstein met them at the door. The moment they stepped inside, the energy shifted. Somebody reached over and cut off the phonograph mid-song. The needle just dragged across the record. Silence swallowed the room. Inside were Harry Keywell, Irving Milberg, and surprise of all surprises, Harry Fleischer. Fleischer was supposed to be gone, hiding from the feds. But there he was. Keywell looked young, almost soft in the face, but that was a mask. Earlier that year, he'd beaten serious gun charges and was whispered about in connection with the St. Valentine's Day massacre. Milberg had been in the game over a decade and had a reputation as a dead-eye shot. Fleischer might have been slight in build, but his record was heavy: kidnapping, robbery, attempted murder. The two groups greeted each other like businessmen about to talk numbers. Paul, Levine, and Leibowitz sat down on the couch. Izzy perched on the armrest. For a few minutes, it almost felt normal. Small talk, calm voices, no tension showing on the surface. Then Fleischer glanced at Bernstein and asked about the accountant, the guy with the books. Bernstein said he'd go grab him. He walked out, but he wasn't looking for any accountant. Bernstein went straight downstairs where a black 1930 Chrysler was waiting. He climbed in, fired up the engine, revved it loud, and leaned on the horn. That was the signal. Upstairs, everything exploded at once. Fleischer pulled his gun and fired at Leibowitz. The shot flew past Levine's face. At the same time, Milberg and Keywell opened up on Sutka and Jaime Paul. The room turned into thunder. Gunfire ricocheted off walls, furniture splintered, smoke filled the air. The victims never had a chance. They scrambled, trying to move, trying to find a door that might save them. There wasn't one. Jaime Paul ended up slumped near the couch. 8 shots tore through his back and head. He was still clutching a cigar when he died. Lebowitz made it into the hallway before he dropped. A battered cigar stub still hung from his mouth. Sutka reached the bedroom. 2 tight shots to the forehead finished him there. He too died holding a stogie. Big dreams, big talk. Between the 3 of them, barely $100 in their pockets, 11 cents on Izzy, $2 on Jaime, 92 on Lebowitz. After the shooting stopped, the silence was heavy. Fleischer looked at Levine, who was somehow still standing, asked if he was all right. Levine couldn't even speak, just nodded, expecting his turn. Instead, the killers huddled, then barked for him to move. They rushed into the kitchen. There, sitting ready, was a bucket of green paint. Fleischer, Milberg, and Keywell dropped their .38 revolvers straight into it. Thick paint coated the metal, killing any fingerprints. Serial numbers had already been filed off before they walked in. The Chrysler screamed out of the alley so fast it nearly ran over a little boy in the street and the sister of a probate court judge. The caretaker later said the driver burned rubber pulling out, but what chilled him most was how calm they looked. No panic, just business. A few blocks away, they slowed down and split up. That's when betrayal started brewing. Bernstein turned to Levine, shook his hand, called him a pal, and handed him a few $100. Told him to go back to the bookie joint and wait, claimed he'd pick him up later. What Levine didn't know was that the real plan was to take him for a ride that night and hang the entire triple murder on him. But things moved faster than the Purples expected. Within an hour, police heat was everywhere, and Levine was sitting in a precinct chair. He tried to spin it, claimed they had all been kidnapped on the way to meet a bootlegger named Harry Klein, told reporters he hadn't seen a soul. Detectives weren't buying it. His story kept shifting. The kidnapping tale fell apart quick. Wayne County prosecutor Harry S. Toy came out swinging. He wanted the gunman dead or alive. No deals, no surrender talks. The city was done playing games. Harry Klein was one of the first picked up. He was caught carrying a monogram marker belonging to one of the victims. Still, he denied everything and somehow walked. But the streets were talking. Once the suspects' names hit the papers, the phones lit up. Not out of civic pride, rivals smelled blood. The Purple Gang had ruled Detroit too long. Enemies were ready to help bury them. Police followed one tip to an apartment belonging to Charlie the Professor Auerbach, a so-called jewelry salesman. Inside they found Ray Bernstein and Harry Keywell hiding out. Also in the apartment were Auerbach's wife and an 18-year-old cabaret dancer, Elsie Carroll. The women were holding over $9,000 in cash. Inside the place, guns and tear gas. When Bernstein was dragged into headquarters, the swagger was gone. Soon after, Milberg was scooped up too. Police raided his flat, and when his wife called to check in, they traced the call to another apartment 3 blocks away. There they found Milberg, Eddie Fletcher, and Abe Axler in the middle of a card game. Milberg tried to bolt through a window, but didn't make it far. Just like that, the killers were in custody. A month later, the courtroom was packed tight. Milberg, Bernstein, and Keywell sat facing life. The Purple Gang poured money into the defense, squeezing local bookies with a daily tax to fund top lawyers. But everything hinged on Solly Levine. Despite the pressure, he held steady, pointed to the 3 men, and said they were the shooters. Prosecutor Toy didn't try to defend the victims' lifestyles. He focused on the betrayal, the promise of partnership, the unarmed meeting, the bullets that settled the books. The jury took 90 minutes. Guilty on all counts. The courtroom erupted, screaming, chaos, officers climbing on tables to regain control. A week later, Judge Donald E. Van Zyl handed down life sentences without parole. Bernstein, Milberg, and Keywell were shipped north to the maximum security prison in Marquette. Fleischer stayed on the run until 1932 and was never convicted for the massacre, though he later did time in Alcatraz for armed robbery. Milberg died behind bars after 7 years. Keywell kept a clean record in prison for 34 years. His sentence was eventually commuted, and in 1965, he walked free. He married, worked, and faded into a quiet life. Bernstein's ending was darker. A stroke left him partially paralyzed. He earned his diploma behind bars, taught other inmates, even helped them financially. He never admitted guilt. In 1964, he was granted mercy parole. He died 2 years later. Levine's story was stranger. Afraid of retaliation, police helped him flee. France sent him back. Ireland wouldn't take him. After that, he disappeared into the wind. As for the rest of the Purple Gang, many met violent ends. When the National Syndicate, backed by Lucky Luciano, began pushing into Detroit, men like Abe Axler and Eddie Fletcher were taken for rides, gangland code for execution. In the end, the Collingwood Manor massacre broke the Purple Gang's back. 5 years of arrogance and street terror collapsed under one case. Ray Bernstein had climbed to the top of Detroit's underworld. His reward was a prison cell and a slow fade.